Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this video, we will be discussing about block IO layer in the Linux. So let's get started. So this is the content that I will be discussing in this video. So we will discuss about block devices. Then we will discuss about buffers and the buffer heads. Then we will discuss about the most important structure, that is biostructure. And then at the end, we will discuss about different kind of IO schedulers available in the Linux kernel. So let's now discuss where this block IO layer exists. So here you can see this is the block IO layer, and it directly communicates with the hard drive or the block device with the help of block device driver. So here you can see that this is the virtual file system. So when we do any kind of IO or the file system IO operation, then it translates to the block IO layer on a specific file system that is stored on a specific block device or hard disk. So let's now discuss what is a block device. So to understand a block device, we have to first differentiate what is the difference between character device and a block device. So in case of character device, we read input character by character as the stream of input. But in case of the block device, we have a freedom to randomly access any data within the disk, and we read this data in the form of fixed size chunks, and that we call it as the blocks. And this is the example of different block devices like hard disk, floppy drives, and the flash memory. So block devices are more complex than character devices. So let's now discuss each component of a block device. So the smallest addressable unit of a block device is called as sector, and this is generally 512 bytes. But when we do operations on the file system, then we do in the form of blocks. So this block is an abstraction of the file system. So you can say that block is consist of different or multiple sectors. So this is the block. So we can say that block sizes are the power of 2 multiple of the sector size. So you can say block is equal to the power some sectors, and it should be less than the page size, because we are not accessing data more than the page size. So this is the physical view of a hard disk. So here you can see that these are the sectors like sector 1, sector 2, sector 3, sector 4, sector 5. And these sectors are mapped on different blocks. These blocks. So these blocks can contain multiple sectors from the hard disk. Let's now discuss buffers and the buffer heads. So when we map a block of a disk or the block of a file system, then we call it as the buffer. So when we map the block in the main memory, then we call it as the buffer. So this buffer is associated with a specific block. So to manage this buffer or block, kernel needs some additional control information or the metadata. So that data we represent with the help of buffer head, and buffer head is represented with the help of this struct buffer underscore head. So you can say that buffer head structure holds all the information that the kernel needs to manipulate a buffers. So let's now discuss the structure buffer head. As we have already discussed that buffer head represents the structure or the information that kernel needs to manipulate a buffer. So here we will see all those control information is stored in this buffer. So here you can see this is the flag that tells the current state of a particular buffer. This is the page address with which this buffer is associated on the disk. And here you can see this is the pointer to the data. So it points to a particular block inside the page, and that represents the disk block. So this is the size of a buffer. So you can say that the address of a buffer is represented by b plus b data plus b size. So this is the actual size of a buffer inside a page. So this is the pointer to a block device for which this buffer is associated, and this is the count variable that represents what is the count of a count of usage of this particular buffer. So here you can see that with the help of the structure buffer, we can do the disk IO operations. So in disk IO operations can be read or write. So we have to write the data on this particular block or buffer in the disk. So for that purpose, we have this pointer, and this is the size, and this tells which page it is associated to correctly do the read or write operations on the disk. So let's now discuss this BH state flag, that means buffer head state or the buffer's state. So here you can see when VH underscore up to date is mentioned, that means buffer contains all the valid data. When we have VH underscore dirty, that means our buffer has been modified and it is not synced with the disk. Similarly, we have VH underscore log, that means our buffer is currently going on with the IO operation and it is logged so that it can prevent the concurrent access of that particular buffer. Similarly, we have VH underscore request, that means our buffer is going on or involved in an IO request. So let's now discuss the buffer head limitations. So as we have already discussed that buffer head describes the mapping between on disk block and the in-memory buffer. So this is the only role in the kernel right now, because buffer head was having few limitations, like it was in large data structure, so it was not clean or simple to like do the IO operations with the help of these buffer and buffer heads. And similarly, it only represents a single buffer. That means when we have a large IO operation like write, so kernel has to decompose it into the different buffers so that it can do that large write operation. So for that purpose, it has to create multiple buffer structures. So it was an overhead uh, to maintain these buffers and maintain the information of these mappings. So the Linux developers came up with the different structure that was flexible and lightweight. So this is called as the biostructure. So this biostructure actually represents the different block IO operations that is currently happening in the disk. So as it is saying that it represents block IO operations that are in flight or active as a list of segments. So what is use of segment? So you can say that these segments are the segments represents the different read or write IO operations. So this bio, you can say that this bio structure is consist of multiple segments, and these segments represents a single IO that can be read or write. So this segment is actually we call it as the VI underscore pack structure. We will see when we see the structure of the bio structure. So the most important fields in the biostructures structure is by underscore io underscore vec and by underscore v count and vi index. So when we it also contains uh, this by count field, so we have to uh, increment or decrement with the help of these two functions. So when we call this function bio underscore get, then we increment this count, but in this case bio underscore put, we decrement the count of y underscore cnt. When we have this new structure bio structure, that doesn't mean that we don't need the buffer head structure. So buffer head structure still is required, but it only tells the mapping between the disk block and the memory pages. So this is the structure bio. So here you can see that this is the sector, associated sector on the disk. This is the request of other biostructures, and this is the pointer to a block device for which this biostructure is associated, and this is the flag variable to represent the state of the block, state of a biostructure. And this is the flag that tells if we are doing a read or write IO operation. And these are the two variables that we have already discussed in the previous slide. So this tells the number of bio underscore back structures inside this bio structure, and this is the actual index inside that particular structure. So this is the structure. This represents the this is the structure of bio underscore back. So actually this represents the individual IO request. So it can be read or write. And this variable tells the count of the usage of this bio structure. Here you can see we have this variable by underscore size. So this tells the number of IO operations count. So here is the interrelationship of these different structures. So as we have seen this, there's a struct bio contains these two fields. So this bio underscore io underscore back represents the first entry of this bio underscore list of bio underscore back structure, and this is the current index inside this list. So this bio underscore back represents a single IO operation. So bio underscore back is single IO operation. So it can be read or write. So these operations are associated with a page because we have to update data on the disk. So those mappings are done with the help of the pages. So this bio underscore back structure is generally consist of three fields. So let's see in the next slide. So here you can see this bio underscore back structure is a vector that is consist of the page, offset, and the length. Because for every read or write IO operation, we need these three things. We need the memory location where we want to do read or write, and then we need the offset where we want to do the read or write, and then we need the length uh, that we want to update. So these are the only uh, three fields that is required. So we are representing these things with the help of this bio underscore back structure. So let's now again discuss these important members of bio structure. So this represents the number of vectors inside this by underscore io underscore back uh, array of bio underscore back, and this is the index currently in this array because we have multiple input output IO operations. So as we finish one by one, the pointer increases and it moves to the uh, different IO request. So this is the same thing as we can see it in the form of structure. So here you can see this is the mapping for the page. This is the length in bytes, and this is the offset within the page. So when these IO requests come from the file system to do some IO on the disk, then we keep these requests in the request queue. So this request queue is represented with the help of this request underscore queue to store all the pending IO request. So this is generally the doubly linked list of request and associated control information that is required by kernel, like in the file system. So each request inside this request queue is represented with the help of this request structure. So let's see in the next slide. So here you can see that this is the list of request queue. So this is request queue. So this is a list of different requests, and these requests are represented with the help of request structure. So here you can see that in the request structure we have this bio field. So each request structure associates that request with the help of a bio structure, and this bio structure contains other variables, these variables that we have already discussed, and this is the mapping to the actual memory where we want to do the update on the disk. So in this way we put our request in the request queue, and these request goes one by one with the help of this bio structure to the memory location on the block device. So let's now discuss what is IO schedulers. So as we have discussed that we can raise disk IOs, read or write. So these request goes to the request queue. So this is the responsibility of the IO scheduler to how to put these requests in the request queue. So these schedulers are very important because the disk accesses are very slow. So we have to optimize for the getting the good performance of the system. So for that purpose, the core job of these IO schedulers are to merging and the sorting of IO request for a particular block device. So let's now discuss what is difference between a process scheduler and the IO scheduler. So in case of process scheduler, it schedules different processes on the processor. So it gives the illusion to the processes that they have the single access to the processor. Similarly, IO scheduler gives different block request the illusion that they have individual block device to fulfill their request. So when we talk about the like sorting of the request, then we sort these requests in the form of sectors. So we keep the sorting of these requests in the sector wise. So because this is required because we access data on the disk according to the sector wise sector. So it improves the performance of the system. So here you can see this is the actual disk, the hard disk. So here you can see this is the read write head and here we have this structure. So this structure is divided into different sector like sector 1, sector 2, sector 3, sector 4, sector 5. So in this way, so this read write head reads these sectors one by one. So if our requests are already sorted, then it can process those requests in the same sequence, and it does not have to move up and down or go or it has to rotate the disk multiple times. So in this way we can optimize the performance of a block device. So here is the pictorial view whatever we have discussed. So this block layer tries to merge or sort these block IO request. Then this is the responsibility of a block scheduler to put those requests in the most optimal manner to the request queue, so that the actual device driver, the block device driver, can fulfill those, can pass those requests to the actual disk or the block device. So we have different kind of IO schedulers. So first one is elevator IO scheduler, second one is deadline IO scheduler, third one is anticipatory IO scheduler, third one is completely fair queuing IO scheduler, and fifth one is knob IO scheduler. So we will discuss one by one each of them. So let's now discuss elevator IO scheduler. So this functions similar to an elevator. That's why its name is as elevator scheduler. So here you can see we have a queue, and we insert the request in the both end, like front and back, and we do the merging on the both side. So like we have request 2, 3, and then we have request 1 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and then we have 6, 7, something like that. So here you can see that if our lift is going upside, then we will ignore this request, and we will keep fulfilling the request of these sectors. So our this request will be very late, and it will not be serviced by the this IO scheduler. So for that purpose we have a age check. In the age check we check if the time period of this request is not is passed, then we try to schedule this request onto the disk. So as we have already discussed that we keep the queue sorted with sorted sector wise. So when we get a new request, we try to insert that request in the appropriate location in the list. If we don't have any location to insert in the list, then we insert that request into the tail of the list. So the deadline IO scheduler tries to minimize the starvation, like we have discussed in the previous slide. So it specifically focus on the read latency, and it tries to minimize it. So why read latency is important? Because when we are trying to read a disk, then it should be very quick, because when we are updating the disk, then it is obvious that application can wait, because it has to write the disk. But in case of read, it has to we have to fulfill the read request as soon as possible. So when we are trying to minimize the read latency, so this scheduler tries to provide the good global throughput. So this scheduler is doing with the help of the expiration time. So each request is associated with a expiration time. So like read request have very small time, like 500 milliseconds, and the write request can have the time like 5 seconds. So this is significantly more than the read request. So then read requests can be fulfilled as soon as possible. So it maintains 3 queues. First one is the sorted queue. So it keeps the each request in this queue in the sector wise sorted manner, but it also keeps 2 requests, 2 different queues in the FIFO manner. This is the read FIFO queue, this is the write FIFO queue. So it will try to fulfill the request one by one from this sorted queue, and once it detects that the expiration time of read or write some request is expired, then after that it will continue scheduling the request from these queues. So in this manner it tries to ensure that read and write request expiration time is met, and accordingly it schedules those requests or put those requests in the dispatch queue, and these requests goes to disk. So in this manner it tries to maintain the minimum latency, and it provides the good throughput, global throughput. So let's now discuss anticipatory IO scheduler. So this scheduler is very similar to the deadline IO scheduler, but in this case, we have this extra thing called anticipation heuristics. So these IO scheduler is specifically for when we have multiple write request and very few read request. So let's assume that we have multiple write request and then we have very few read request. So scheduler will be scheduling these requests one by one, one by one. When it sees that it got the read request, then it will try to uh, wait for some seconds or milliseconds, like 6 milliseconds, for the anticipation that more read request will be coming, so that it can merge those requests and fulfill in the single go. So uh, happens with the help of this anticipation heuristics. So it decides for how much time we have to wait for other read request. So whatever request we get in this period, we serve those read request. So this is ideal for server kind of scenarios. So let's now discuss completely fair IO scheduler. So in this case, we are keeping one queue for each process, and we keep the IO request from particular process on that particular queue that is specific for that each process. So in this scheduler goes into those particular queues one by one and get the request from each queue, and then it schedules on the disk. So this is completely fair to each process running in the system, because it is serving the request from each queue one by one. So finally, let's discuss what is NOP IO scheduler. So NOP IO scheduler only does the merging, it does not do sorting. So this is very specific scheduler, and it is uh, for the block devices that are truly random access. That means uh, it will be accessed randomly, and the request will be coming anytime. So like the flash memory. So for that purposes, we have NOP IO scheduler. So as we have discussed different kind of IO schedulers, so how we can choose a specific scheduler. So in the Linux, we have an option like elevator. So at the boot time, we can specify in place of foo whatever IO scheduler we want to choose. So if we want to choose the anticipatory, then we can specify in place of foo, we can specify AS, or we can specify CFQ, or we can specify deadline or no. So in the conclusion, we can say that we have discussed the block devices and the different structures that is required to do the block IO operations on a particular block device. So we have discussed the buffer and buffer head structures, and then we have discussed the biostructure and other related information into of the biostructure. And then we discussed the request queue, because request queue contains all the request that is scheduled by a scheduler. So at the end, we have discussed different kind of IO schedulers, those that schedules different requests and puts them into the request queue. So this is all for this video. I will see you in the next video.